Hello, I'm Sean Paul with Morningstar Missions. Thank you so much for stopping by and watching our video series on how to become a full-time missionary. You know, our prayer is that these become a massive blessing to you and get you started right in the mission field. If you want to contact me, feel free to do so. My email address is in the description of this YouTube video. If you want to network with fellow missionaries, we also have a link there to our Facebook group. Please join. We would love to have you. Make sure you subscribe to this channel because we're definitely going to be adding a lot more content in the future. And then the final note is that this video series is based off a book by the name of Pursuing the Call. The author is Daniel Lamastra, and he's a full-time missionary in El Salvador. Thank you so much for watching. Hey, David and Hannah, thank you so much for joining me on the Zoom call as far as for this missionary training. Today, we're going to be talking about developing a network of missionaries and community. I remember, David, you and I were talking about the outline and stuff, and you are the one that brought this up. And I do recognize that we definitely need to have this. And then I think it was after the fact of the hurricane that we talked. And then obviously the situation that you guys went through as far as with the hurricane. This is a perfect fit for you guys as far as for this training here and the importance of that, you know, missionaries need to develop a network in a community. So welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, it's an honor for us to be able to be a part of this. And if God can use us, hey, let's go for it. You know, this is great.
Amen. And you guys have been on the mission field for how long?
For 5.5 years. It'll be 6 years in January.
Okay. Awesome. And then you guys obviously went through the hurricane situation, and you guys have definitely knew what it felt like to have a network and a community of fellow missionaries to help you guys into this situation. I'll fill everybody in. They lived in an area called La Lima, and basically La Lima was underwater, the whole entire town, the whole entire area. And unfortunately, you guys' all your belongings and everything were, you know, in a bad situation. You had a lot of missionaries come and help you guys in that situation. Plus, you guys were getting ready to go back to the States for a little while. So it was a tremendous need and help for missionaries to chip in. You even had missionaries coming from like Tegucigalpa to come and help. So it was awesome. So if you don't mind, you know, David, you're the one that brought the subject up. You're the one that included this subject into this training. Just share from your heart, and Hannah as well, please share from your heart, you know, the importance of developing a network and you know, of missionaries in a community.
So when we first got to Honduras, we were on fire. I mean, we had been through Bible college, we paid up for student loans. We were just super excited when we finally got to Honduras. Hannah was pregnant. And we went straight to Spanish school in La Ceiba to learn Spanish. Even though I look brown, I grew up in the U.S. most of my life, so I still had to go to Spanish school and learn proper Spanish. So anyways, we get to Honduras, and we really just try to get into the culture, try to get into the life here as missionaries. But one of our biggest struggles is we realized we did not know anybody in Honduras, and there was some very difficult times in our life. When we first moved here, after Nicholas was born, 10 days later, we moved to the jungle, had an amazing time with the people there in the jungle. But every time we came to the city to get supplies or to get legal paperwork done, again, our son was born here. So we would come to San Pedro. Now we live in San Pedro, but we would come to San Pedro to go to the U.S. consulate, to go to banks, to go to do legal paperwork, and we were scared. And I'm, not scared for our lives, but just like we did not know anybody. Like it was just Hannah and me, and we knew there were Christians and missionaries, but we were just so. It was a very weird situation, intimidating, because we knew there were Christians and missionaries here. We just didn't know anybody. And so Hannah and I one day told each other, if we ever have the opportunity to bless other missionaries, especially new missionaries that come to the country, let's do everything we can to reach out. Or if they ask for help, let's reach out, because we know what it's like to show up in a country and not know anybody. So yeah.
Yeah. And did you want to add something, Hannah, or?
No, you're good. Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, we didn't talk a lot about it, but, HFMM is a network of missionaries here in Honduras. I'm not saying all countries have that. And obviously this video will be watched by missionaries that's going into Russia or Africa or whatever. And, I highly encourage them to tap into either an organization in country that's serving missionaries in that area that will connect people, because obviously HFMM connects us together. It's not like an authoritative figure over our lives, but it's like a network to say, hey, we're here to help. And I think that that's what kind of threads us together. That's how we met, through the Facebook group. And then, by asking questions on Facebook, you get to know each other. And then obviously you guys, what's the word? Well, people talk, but they never put no action to it. But you two did, because you started providing a service for missionaries to park their cars when they went to the airport. And that was a massive need. I had some friends in Progreso that we parked their car, but then they left Honduras. So we were like, where are we going to park our car if we leave country? And obviously you guys were providing that service. So you did make good on your promise as far as in connecting and helping missionaries in country. So I greatly appreciate your guys' service that you did that. Now, we talked about, as far as like missionaries, I'm kind of looking at my notes here. We talked about missionaries in country, and it's kind of like sometimes there's some missionaries that kind of have a sense of competition. And I don't know where they get this thought process that it's a competition. I don't know about you, but I think there's a lot of work there in this country. And I think we have plenty of work, and I don't think there's any need for competition. Why do you think that is? Why do you think missionaries kind of have this sense of that there's a competition among other missionaries?
I just think that some missionaries, as spiritual as they are, they think they're better than other missionaries. And I remember in North Carolina, in one of our supporting churches, meeting another missionary family that they were also visiting our supporting church, and our church took them on. So both families, our family and this missionary family, were both coming to Honduras. And I want to get to meet this family. Hey, we're both going to the same country. And he kind of blew me off. And I'm not going to mention their names. We're now great friends. But this couple blows us off. And I'm like, okay, so something happened that we got to the mission field about 2 years before them, I think. So we get to the mission field before, and the entire time, we're telling them, hey, when you come to Honduras, let us know. We'll help you in any way, shape, or form. And it wasn't until they got to Honduras that they realized we have to work together as missionaries. Mm-hmm. And now they are on the other side of the country, but we work together all the time. And so this competition, it needs to go away. And some missionaries have competition because of their let's just say their differences in denomination. So let's just say one missionary is Baptist and another one is Central Baptist, or in our case, our church, our Sunday church, is non-denominational, but we also have a lot of our churches that support us that are Baptist churches. And so we don't get so caught up in the denomination. We get caught up in the Word of God. That's what matters, right? Yeah. But a lot of missionaries are like, hey, if you're not from my exact denomination, I don't want to hang out with you guys. Mm-hmm. And so when Hannah and I, our mission agency ended up kind of pulling out temporarily out of the jungle. And so I was actually a jungle pilot, and my wife and I lived in the jungle. When our mission agency ended up pulling out, we were, by God's grace, able to join another ministry that's based out of here in San Pedro Sula, but we travel the whole country. And so through Honduran Fellowship, we began to go to Honduran Fellowship once a year has this big retreat. I don't know, like 300 missionaries or something, would you say? A bunch. So we started getting to know missionaries, and people started finding out that we live next to the international airport. And so one missionary said, hey, David, do you mind if I leave my car on your property? I said, no worries. I never asked him what denomination he was. I was like, you know what? You're a missionary serving God. You want to bring your car and leave it here for a couple of weeks, for a month or 2 months, we'll take care of it. We just wanted to be a blessing to missionaries. And I was even a sort of a taxi service every now and then if I was available to drive back and forth to the airport and pick them up 1 a.m, 4 a.m, whatever. So that's how it started. We had another missionary that they came down from Cihuatepeque, and her husband had surgery. And this surgery on his back was supposed to be like, I don't know, like an hour or two. And I think it lasted 14 hours or more.
Wow.
And so this lady doesn't know anything in the city. She's totally lost here in the city.
And it's close to it's in the middle of the night.
Yeah, it's in the middle of the night. Her husband is in the middle of this long surgery, this huge procedure. And she calls us and she's like, hey, David, I know you live in San Pedro. Could you help me? She's like, my husband's in surgery and the doctors told me to go get more medication, more pain medicine. Imagine that. The hospital didn't have enough pain medicine for his surgery, whatever. Well, I'm not going to go out of San Pedro 1 a.m. It's kind of, driving around the city. Anyways, I called my boss and he said, yeah, come and pick me up. So my boss and I got in a car and we drove to the hospital. And the first thing we did is we bought her food. She had not had any lunch or dinner.
Wow.
And it was late at night. I mean, she was starving.
She was scared to leave.
And she was scared to leave.
Yeah.
She didn't know where to go or what taxi. So we got her food. Then we went out. Now, what pharmacies open that late at night? Who knows? So we called a church member from our body of Christ that we know that this guy knows every store that's open late at night because he's very familiar with the city. And so he gets in the car with us and we went through like 3 or 4 different pharmacies to find this 24-hour pharmacy that had the medication. And so that's how it started. We were just available.
Yeah.
We were just available to help. Now, our main job is not to help missionaries. Our main job is to share the gospel, evangelize, to work with churches. But as much as we can, we try to reach out to other missionaries.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's important. We have a lady here that came, she connected with us. She found out we were living in Copanrinas. She has a heart for Copanrinas. So she wanted to connect with us. And in time, she's now a full-time missionary here, but we partner with her on many things. We go into the mountains, we do outreaches and so forth. She has her own mission organization, but still at the same time, I mean, I'm not threatened by her. I don't feel threatened at all. I feel like we should embrace each other because as we embrace each other, all we're going to do is just be stronger for the things of God. And, I know that you mentioned your missionaries in one of your supporting churches. I'll never forget this. We had a gentleman that was connecting to another ministry, or we were connected to one of the same ministries. And I made mention of offering and so forth like that. And I'm not saying that I was concerned, but I'm just saying that I made kind of a statement alluding to that I was concerned about our offerings, being dwindled, because of this connection. And one of the gentlemen over the ministry said, I just think that's the least thing that you should be thinking about. And he said, you should just trust God and allow him to distribute the funds as needed. And, really, I like that correction. And that did correct me. And I tell you, it's just never something that I've ever dealt with in my life thereafter. And really, why should we be concerned about other missionaries, or why should we be concerned feel threatened by their work? And if they're connected to the same organization that we are, we should embrace the fact that they're obeying God and doing the work of God, and just let God deal with whatever, So I don't think there's any need to have competition.
The first time that I ever saw bonding with missionaries in my life and seeing how missions really work with missionaries was in Indonesia. So Hannah and I were engaged, and Hannah went to I said, Hannah, because we're engaged, I don't want us to go to the same country in case things go wrong and we lose our flights and we have to stay in hotels, so she went to Morocco, Africa, really hot Morocco, Africa for the summer. And she was a teacher and she taught for almost 2 months. And I went to Papua New Guinea. So I flew to New Zealand, then Australia, and then hopped over to Papua New Guinea. And I was in the jungle, way out there in the jungle with Bible translators, with Wycliffe Bible translators. And there was a mission base there. They're still there, mission base with like 500 missionaries, huge mission base. And that's the first time in my life that I saw missionaries working together. Like, yeah. I was like, this what it's like. Is this what it's supposed to be like? And it was so cool. And I even remember missionaries going through financial hardships. because they went through some major emergency and they're so far from the United States that even if you send money, it takes days, electronically to get there. But anyways, I remember missionaries helping each other out, even financially, saying, "Hey, this month you had a bad month. I'm going to help you, and next month if I have a bad month, maybe you can help me." And I was like, "What? Do their churches know that they're sharing money?" It just blew me away. And then I realized this is what the body of Christ is like. All these missionaries have different roles here in the jungle. Some of them translate music, Christian music. Some of them translate the Bible. Some of them fly planes to fly the missionary supplies back and forth, and just different things. But it was such a sweet harmony to see that.
Yeah, and I think we're talking about maybe a few situations out of hundreds of missionaries here in country. I mean, I believe in my heart we have a strong network, and so if anybody's watching this video, I just pray that you get out of it is that you need to find some way somehow to connect with missionaries via Facebook. Facebook groups in country. If there's an organization, like I said, HFMM here, basically helps us get our residencies, helps us stay connected, helps us stay on the mission field, as in teaching and training, various aspects of being a missionary. So I highly recommend anybody to reach out and try to find those organizations. But also, too, it's just like, I always believe in sowing and reaping. I believe in, if I'm wanting maybe a missionary to sow into my life, as far as in a time of need, if my wife and I are in a need, we should be looking for opportunities to sow into other missionaries' lives. I believe in that seed and harvest. It's just a spiritual law that God's established. I believe in that you cannot turn a blind eye to a fellow missionary in need, and then in the future, you're gonna have to have a need. I mean, John south of San Pedro Sula has helped us immensely, in times of need, meaning me calling him and saying, "Hey, I need some help. I need a ride to go to the mechanic shop. Can someone pick me up?" I mean, I've had those type of missionaries that help me. So I think we should always be willing to look for opportunities to find missionaries that are in need. And I think in our Facebook group, there's two of them that we follow here in the country. There's been a missionary that's been pointed out that, hey, I have a gentleman that's in need of medical care. I don't know about you, but I've extended help. I've extended help to them. There's other missionaries. I remember in Romania. I'll tell you this. I know, obviously it's a different country, across the Atlantic Ocean, but I remember him posting on Facebook about, that we're needing a car, and I'm not saying that he was hinting, for, hey, give me some financial support, but he was saying online that they were looking for a car and they needed to, collect the funds for that. And, everybody was saying, "We'll pray for you. We'll pray for you. We'll pray for you." And I was just getting so upset at that. And finally, I just said, "He doesn't need your prayers. He needs your money." And so anyway, I private messaged him and I said, "Look, I'm sorry I blew up your post, but I apologize, but I'm going to put my mouth where my money is," or whatever the saying is. And I sent him an offering. Now, I'm not saying that to brag on myself, just trying to use this example. Well, anyway, he messaged me back and said, "Brother, don't even worry about it. Because of what you said, we raised the funds for our car and we were able to get the car. But now listen to this. We were in the need of a car. So we sowed, out of our ministry money, we sowed money to that gentleman to get his car. And we were needing a car, law of seed and harvest. Somebody from our home church said, 'Look, we have a vehicle. We would love to get to you down in Honduras.' I said, 'Please, just sell it and send me the money if you would mind.'" And so more or less that money that they sowed was basically, I think it's like 10% or what? No, it was like 100%. It was well over 100%. If, more or less, it was like well over the amount that we sowed. And basically we were able to buy our vehicle. So I'm just saying, we're talking about missionaries connecting with missionaries. We're talking about, obviously, for social reasons, but we're also talking about ministry reasons of partnering with each other in ministry. but also, like you just said, sow financially into other missionaries ministries. And I just believe law of seed and harvest, you're going to find that come back and be a return in your ministry as well.
While we talk about money, there was a missionary, a really old missionary that I met in the U.S. as Hannah and I were preparing for missions, and this really old missionary that had retired from the mission field, that spent a gazillion years in the field. I was before a church, and they asked me where I was at financially, and I said, "Oh, I've already reached 100% of the money that I need to go on this mission trip overseas." Yeah, this was a mission trip. And afterwards, this old missionary told me that he said, "David, don't ever tell anybody you are at 100%. If God keeps providing, use that money overseas to help others who are really hurting." Yeah. And I never understood that. Like, that didn't make sense. It didn't click. I heard him. I listened. I tried to understand, but it didn't click till I was in Honduras. And not every missionary is an American missionary. There are missionaries from all over the world, but here we work in Honduras. And part of our team of missionaries are Honduran missionaries, and they are nowhere near 100%.
Yeah.
There might be a 40, 50, 60%, if that.
They can't do furloughs.
And
proper furloughs.
They can't fly to the U.S. and raise support. They don't even have a passport or visa. And, so part of our financial funds that come in, sometimes Hannah and I support these Honduran missionaries who do such a great job, and they're sold out for the Lord. And I realized it took me a while, but I realized what that old man had told me, what that very experienced missionary, he said, "Don't ever tell people you're 100%. If more money comes in, use it for the ministry." And so part of what we use, we try to live frugal, and we do support other ministries and other Honduran missionaries who are doing a great job. Amen. Would you like to say something from the ladies' perspective of working with missionary women? Any encouragements or something? Or
one thing I wanted to say, I thought about this at the very beginning. To be a missionary, you have to have a pretty strong personality. David and I talk about that a lot. A lot of missionaries, I do believe, are type A personalities. Maybe not every single missionary, but they get in and they get it done. And I think that's why sometimes there have been conflicts with other missionaries, because you have to be pretty stubborn to get to the mission field, in my opinion.
Yeah.
David and I worked and prayed for many, many years to get to the mission field. And it was very difficult, and it was a long process, but we kept at it by God's grace. And I think sometimes that can be an issue of why some missionaries maybe don't get along, or they might want to stay kind of secluded in their own little corner because they just feel, "Oh, I don't know if I can do this," And then another extreme, I think sometimes as missionaries, we always need to make sure that we are also reaching out to the nationals. David and I have seen in our experience where there have been missionaries that they only associate with missionaries. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not. I don't know if you've had that experience, Sean, but we have seen that where they're in the country, but they don't really want to be connected with the actual Honduran people. They kind of want to stay in their little missionary circle or their missionary bubble, even to the point of maybe neglecting local church, not wanting to be involved in the Honduran local church. I'm just sharing some of our experience of what we've seen. And sure. For me, in my opinion, I don't think that's healthy. I think you have to have a good balance. So for David and I, we have a lot of close national Honduran friends, but we also have a lot of close missionary friends. And I think it's important to have that balance on both sides to be healthy, in my opinion.
Well, just to extend on that, the reason why Hannah has explained that balance is because we have seen missionaries that only have other missionaries as friends. But guess what? Missionaries come and go. Missionaries come and they leave the field, or they'll come for a certain amount of time and then they go home for a 2-month furlough. So what do you do if you're going through a hard time and your best friend is gone for 2 months? And so we see missionaries who don't have a deep relationship with the locals, with the nationals, with the people that they came to minister to. And when those missionaries, when their best friends leave the country, or God calls them to some other country, and they can't take it, that they're hurting so bad. And so that's why it's so important. And sometimes locals can correct you, or they can teach you culture, or they can just see things that you might not see. And that's very important to have, or you might not be able to catch that from other missionary friends. Also, one of the things that I believe is it can be a conflict with missionaries are new missionaries coming in to a team that's very established, and this team has been on the field for 15, 20 years. And Hannah and I saw this. We saw this when we first got to Honduras. We brought some bright ideas. I mean, we came fresh out of Bible college. We were on fire. We were just, ready to take on hell with the water pistol. And we had all these great ideas, and the missionaries that have been on the field for all these years completely blew us out of the water. Completely, all your ideas. We're gonna do things the way we've done them for the past 20 years, and my way or the highway. And Hannah and I were like, okay, sorry, because we do want to submit to our authority. We do want to submit to our bosses, our team leaders. They play a very important role. But sometimes if these people are not willing to cultures change over the years too. But anyways, for Hannah and I, that was a big deal. And so that those missionaries that we were working under, they just got burned out. They were not healthy, and they had to leave the field. And that's why Hannah and I had to switch agencies, because those missionaries left the field. And then we get this other boss, our new boss, that he is just amazing. He was in the Dominican Republic for like 12 years as a missionary. Now he's been a missionary in Honduras for 8 years. He has so much more experience. Him and his wife have so much more experience than Hannah and I have, but yet they're willing to listen to the rest of the team and to be able to switch and change things around. Like, hey, you know what? That idea that you have, that's a bad idea, but that idea that you have, that's a great idea. And so we work together, and it's really neat as missionaries when we work together as a team, instead of having just the one couple that has, all the years saying, no, we're going to be just do it my way or the highway. And that's where I see missionaries clash a lot. And even the Bible, I got up like at 3 a.m. The Lord woke me up at 3 a.m. and I said, this is the perfect time to review. I'm not going to preach, right?
I told him not to preach, Sean.
How much time do I have left? 3 hours? No, but I'm not going to preach. But I do want to share just a few verses. Or just a few ideas. In Acts chapter 2, Peter preaches, about repentance. About 3,000 people get saved, right? Acts chapter 3, Peter and John go minister together. They're having a great time. Acts chapter 4, Peter and John end up in jail. But you know what? It says they spoke the word with boldness. They were super excited. They were together. I mean, they were together in ministry, having a great time. And when things were not so great, they were still having a great time. Acts chapter 5, verse 17 talks about the apostles were placed in prison. And then if you read around verse 40, it says, rejoice, they get out, rejoicing that they were counted worthy to suffer a shame for his name, and they cease not to teach and preach Jesus Christ. Here they are. These are like, two guys just having a great time, even though they're going through the rough. Acts chapter 6 into 7, Stephen is kind of by himself and he gets killed. And, God knows, when our time to die comes, our time to die comes. But I've always wondered, what if Stephen would have had a buddy with him? Would the people have thought it twice before, killing Stephen? Who knows? Acts chapter 8, Philip preaches, and then it says, and people in Samaria get saved. And then the apostles in Jerusalem, they sent Peter and John to go join Philip in his ministry. They're like, hey, Philip's doing something great. Go join him and see what's going on, see how you can help him. And then we get to Acts chapter 9, where Saul, really gets saved. He comes to conversion there on the road. And then, Saul was kind of by himself without other believers. In fact, he was persecuting the Christians at that time, but he has an encounter with God, and he's not with other Christians. He's by himself there. Then we get to verse 24, and it says, when the Jews tried to kill Saul, the disciples, right? This is after he gets saved. The disciples, they saved his life by helping him to escape down the city in a basket. They got this rope, they got this basket. So there was plenty of times where Saul, bad things were going to happen to him, and his buddies, his disciples, his missionary friends came out and helped him out. Acts 13, Barnabas and Saul. And Barnabas is a cousin. Remember his cousin, John Mark. They went on their first missionary trip. So Paul's going everywhere. These guys are traveling together. They're having a great time. But, Acts 15, later on, Paul and Barnabas, as missionary friends, as co-workers, they had a split up. They split up over John Mark. Later on, they made up their differences. Acts chapter 16, Paul and Silas end up in jail. So a lot of great things. A lot of rough things, but we get to the part where Acts 18, Silas and Timotheus, they arrive in Macedonia to join Paul. So there's a part where Paul, leaves his friends. Sometimes Paul was going so fast, he just wanted to get to the next town and share Christ. And his friends were like, hey, we just got here. These people are getting saved. So his friends would stay behind and Paul would go by himself. And we get to chapter 18. It says, Paul departed in verse 7. Paul departed and left his friends. And he gets in a lonely and sad situation. And then in verse 9, it says that the Lord spoke to Paul and encouraged him. Be not afraid, but speak, and hold not thy peace, for I am with thee, for I have much people in this city. And so it's just amazing that Paul is alone and he has enough he has some doubt, some fear, whatever. And the Lord has to say, Paul, keep doing what you're doing. And so Paul stays in that city for a year and a half. Then in Acts chapter 23, verse 11, when Paul is by himself again, and he's in jail in Jerusalem, and he's afraid of being killed. He almost got killed, but he got protected and he's in jail. The Lord stood by him and said, be of good cheer, Paul, for as thou hast testified of me in Jerusalem, so much thou bear witness also in Rome. He's like, God's telling him, hey, you're going all the way to Rome.
Yeah.
And so all that to say that as missionaries, we need to try and hang out with other missionaries and work together for the whole point of sharing the gospel and winning people to Christ. But the times where we don't get to hang out with other missionaries and the time where we feel like we're alone, that's the time to remember God is always there with us. We might not have missionary friends right there at that moment with us, but God never leaves us. And as we see in 3 different passages, where Paul was kind of, felt alone, but God was there with him and God spoke to him and God directed him and God just gave him that peace. So going back to the hurricane, we're in a hurricane and we can't evacuate. This hurricane, my wife and I have common sense. If we notice that we're going to be in danger, we will try to move out of that danger zone. I'll at least use common sense. But the way that it happened in our town, the government didn't really warn. This hurricane, it kind of hit, this hurricane was going straight for Nicaragua. Mm-hmm. So let's just think that you're from the U.S. and you live in North Carolina and this hurricane hits South Carolina. It doesn't even hit North Carolina. So for us, that's kind of what happened. You've got Honduras and Nicaragua. This hurricane is really aiming for Nicaragua. We are all the way on the other side of Honduras. It's kind of hitting the south side of Honduras, all the way on the southern side. And into Nicaragua. So we're in the northern side of Honduras thinking, we might get some rain, but this hurricane is all the way over there. It's not really going to affect us. And so, and the government wasn't too worried about it. Most of our neighbors were relaxed. They weren't worried about it. So
we still took some precautions.
Yeah, we took precautions. I tried to be somewhat of a little bit of a prepper. I trust God, but I try to have common sense.
Big prepper.
And so I went, I'm like, just in case this water gets anywhere near about to come into our house, just in case, let's get some sandbags. So we got some sandbags. I had a worker that helped me to put sandbags. We moved the stove and everything up on bricks, just a few things up high. We were leaving anyways to the U.S. So we packed up our suitcases just like if we were flying out on the 3rd. And on the 2nd, our flight got canceled. And we realized we might be here for this hurricane because our flight got canceled. We're not leaving. And that's when the hurricane hit and we were not even supposed to be home. We're supposed to be in the U.S. but by that day. So our flight gets canceled. We end up staying. And then when the waters just all from Honduras, the mountains came down to the lowest part of the valley, which is right, San Pedro Sula is a valley, but La Lima, right next to San Pedro, is really, underwater there. And the waters came and we were able to evacuate to our neighbor's house. And right before the waters came, I told my worker, my yard worker, I said, hey, why don't you help me get this portable generator upstairs to the neighbor's house? And he's like, oh, hermano Mora, brother David, don't worry. The water's not going to come that high. I said, I know it's not going to come that high, but just in case, let's get the generator upstairs. And having that generator in our neighbor's house was huge because it helped us to be able to charge our phones. We can turn on the generator, keep the food in the fridge cold, and be able to charge our cell phones to call for help.
Because we were without electricity for 96 hours.
96 hours, yeah. So the government, once they found out that all the cities here were flooding, they decided to turn off the energy to a bunch of the cities down here in the valley to keep, the power lines from shocking the water because there was people in the water. And So because we had that generator, we were able to charge our phones. And my boss was nearby too in another house. He called the U.S. Embassy. Our mission organization, I think they had one or two teams prepared, but those rescue teams were not able to make it because the airport was underwater. The airport was totally flooded. And so we're in a situation where the U.S. Embassy sent helicopters and they were flying over, but they couldn't get to us because there were too many trees, too many power lines, and the house that we were in was too weak. If a rotor blade got too close, it was gonna crush the house on top of us. And then in La Lima, that happened, and there was a school, like a 3-story building, and the helicopters got close to the building to rescue some of the people, and the whole like top level of the third floor where the roof collapsed on top of the people.
Oh, wow.
So they realized that helicopters are great in the right conditions. We were in the wrong condition. The roof and the buildings were too weak to support helicopters. And then the firefighters, and rescue teams here in Honduras tried to send boats to our location, to our neighborhoods to get everybody out. But let's just say that all the streets go north and south, and the river, was flowing. When it overflowed, all the water was going east to west. Just an example. So if a rescue boat tries to go down your street to rescue you, the water is pushing the rescue boats off the street.
They were tipping over.
And they were tipping over. And below the water, there was trucks, there was cars on the street. So below the water, if they hit an obstacle, they would also flip over. So that's why we ended up staying there 5 days, just waiting for rescue. And that whole time, we didn't have missionaries there with us, but we had the Lord. And we really knew that one of those days that we were going to die. I think it was the second, third day. We knew that once the water had reached that second level, that second story,
it was almost
it was almost in the house. And I said, this house is on beams. It's off, it's a wooden house. If it floats, we'll go with the house. So we are saved and we know where we're going when we die. But once the water started going down and we realized, okay, I think we've made it past the worst. That's when we started getting phone calls from missionaries in Cihuatepec, missionaries in Tegucigalpa. I mean, we had this one guy that I had never met in my life. He was a new missionary here. I think he had been in country for 4 or 5 months. And so this missionary said, "Hey, David, I've done catastrophe relief work in the U.S. I have some experience. I'm putting together a team. We want to go tomorrow to rescue you guys tomorrow." And I said, it was like a Thursday or a Friday. I think it was a Friday.
It was only like the third day, and there was still water. The
Yeah.
waters had not completely.
And I said, I love you guys. Thank you for your thoughts. Just keep praying for us. But there was no way that you will rescue us. The water is higher than the vehicles. So the next day, he called again. Hey, how's the water? He kept calling every day. And then finally on Saturday, he goes, "David, tomorrow's the day," because the water was down to my knees at that point. And he said, "Tomorrow's Sunday. We're going to rescue you guys." And so anyways, I said, listen, so anyways, they came and I had a water tank. Again, I try to think of how to be prepared for whatever. And, about 2 years before, I had put up a water tower with a water tank in case there was some catastrophe. We had some spare water, and that water lasted us the entire 5 days. But guess what? I couldn't get water to my neighbors because the currents were so strong. The water was so strong. I couldn't get to my neighbor's house, and all my neighbors were dehydrated. They had been without water for 2-3 days, and so these missionaries that got together, they came with big trucks, 4x4 vehicles, and 2 of those trucks had 200. They had these large water containers, and each one carried about 250 gallons of water. So I'm talking about these missionaries came with 500 gallons of water. They brought food, cleaning supplies. So they were not only helping us, they were there to minister to the people. And after we got rescued, those missionaries, they stayed there for months. We had, I'm not going to mention all the different mission organizations, but they came down because I felt like a coward. I said, I need to go home to the U.S. and recuperate. I need to spend, I just need to catch my breath. My wife and I have lost everything. We almost died. We need to go through counseling, debriefing. We need to process, because if we're going to be in Honduras as missionaries long term, we need to recover from this. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if we leave our town, what about all of our people in our body of Christ and everybody who flooded? What about, I don't want to ditch them. I don't want to be a coward. And these missionaries stayed, and they came, but they would stay 1 week on, 1 week off. Some of them would take turns, and they kept coming into my town and helping to wash everybody's houses and helping people to recover. And that was a huge blessing, because I was able to go home for 2 months, or go back to the U.S. for 2 months. And my wife and I were able to get some help and recover from that. And when we came back to Honduras, we came back healthy.
Yeah.
mentally,
Amen.
emotionally, psychologically. And so it's very important that those missionaries did what they did. So yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, this story that you just shared is a prime example of what we're talking about. So, well, I just wanted to, wrap this up. Uh, Anybody that's watching this video, it's just really important that, just like David and Hannah says, that you just cannot stay isolated. You cannot stay isolated, in the sense of you and your family, because that's a habitual. I mean, I'll be honest with you. We are kind of isolated people. That's kind of our personality. We do partner with fellow missionaries here locally. We do spend time with fellow missionaries here locally. But I think it should be an encouragement that, sometimes people, even in the States, they have a habit of just isolating with their family, and they have very little connection with friends. Maybe they don't have family there locally, and, they just basically just stay with their family. And I think once you're in the mission field, you're going to find out that you're going to need fellow missionaries. And then, like Hannah encouraged, not only do we need to not just connect with gringo missionaries, but we need to look out and develop friends in the actual country itself. And I want to make sure people understand, Hannah's not saying that they come and they do nothing with the nationals. They do something with the nationals, but they don't make nationals their friends. They're like, okay, well, your ministry, arm's length, but we're only going to hang around with, just gringos, Americans. And she's encouraging that you would try to connect with actual people of country as well, to have them as friends as well. So I think it's going to,
have a balance.
Yeah, exactly. A balance. And I'll be honest with you, you did kind of minister to me, because I don't have that, I am one of the hermit missionaries that, I'm kind of a loner type guy. And I do recognize the need to connect with missionaries. We don't have very many missionaries here. I think the only missionary we have is a lady that we helped establish here. I don't think that there's any other missionaries in Copanrinas. So I think if we were in San Pedro Sula, we would probably have more of a network of friends.
And that was the thing, Paul. It all depends on location, because some of these people watching the video, they might end up somewhere in the world where there's no missionaries anywhere within 100 miles.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was a pilot, we flew to the jungle, and we lived in the jungle, and there was only about 2 missionary families in the entire jungle that we hung out with, our bosses. And then if we drove about 5 to 8 hours, depending on how muddy it was, if we drove 5 to 8 hours to Puerto Napita, there was another young couple that we had met. So we only knew 2 missionary families, So it depends where you're at.
Amen. Well, thank you guys for joining on this Zoom call and helping bless some missionaries, learning how to become full-time missionaries. Be blessed. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.